Before time itself had a name, there was a vast and silent emptiness, a quiet darkness that stretched on forever. Then a thought, a single powerful idea from a mind we call God, not words but light and energy. From this singular point, everything exploded into being, a cosmic genesis, a grand, beautiful beginning. Stars were born from swirling clouds of dust spinning into magnificent galaxies. Each galaxy a testament to intricate design, a universe painted onto nothingness. The scale is almost too much to hold. Planets began to form, circling their parent stars in a silent cosmic dance. Fiery giants of gas, frozen worlds of ice and rock. But one was special, a small blue and green jewel, perfectly placed. Oceans swelled with water, mountains pushed toward the young sky. The air was crafted, a delicate balance, a patient, deliberate process over eons. Then the first stirrings of life. In warm sunlit waters, simple organisms took shape. The first notes in a symphony growing more complex over millions of years. Life crawled from ocean onto land. Strange plants reached for the sun, painting continents green. Creatures of all shapes and sizes appeared, filling the air, filling the seas, filling the land. God looked upon this world and saw that it was good. Birds sang, great beasts roamed the plains, fish filled the seas. Everything moved in a perfect rhythm. The world seemed a finished work of art. But the artist was not finished. The most important part of the plan was still to come. The stage was set, the orchestra was tuned. Now it was time for the main actors to appear. Into this perfect world, God introduced something entirely new. A being created not just from the elements of the earth but in the very image of the Creator. These were the first humans. They were given minds to wonder, hearts to feel, and a spirit that could connect directly with the divine. But a question entered the garden. A whisper of doubt. Could there be something more? Is there knowledge being kept from us? This question, planted like a seed, began to grow. They stood before their one boundary, the simple rule given to them. They saw it not as a sign of love but as a limitation. The freedom to choose, meant to be a gift, now became a burden. They looked at the forbidden fruit with desire. It was a pivotal moment, a crossroads. The choice was made. In a single act of disobedience they reached out. They broke the one rule. Not a grand physical rebellion but a profound spiritual one. A choice to trust their own understanding over the wisdom of their Creator, to be their own gods. The perfect connection was fractured. The clear conversation with God was replaced by static, fear, shame. The plan was dramatically diverted from its intended course. They felt ashamed. They hid from the presence of God. The harmony of the garden was broken. The single choice made in the garden did not end with the first humans. It sent ripples out through time, affecting every generation that followed. The initial fracture in the connection with God grew wider with each passing age. Humanity, now adrift from its anchor, began to create its own rules, its own gods, its own definitions of right and wrong. The simple, loving guidance of the Creator was replaced by complex systems of power, greed, fear. People began to see each other not as brothers and sisters in a shared existence, but as competitors in a struggle for survival and dominance. The world became a far more complicated and confusing place. This separation from the divine source led to a separation from each other. Communities that were meant to live in harmony began to build walls. Suspicion replaced trust. The idea of us versus them was born, and it became one of the most destructive forces in human history. Nations rose and fell, fighting over land, resources, ideologies. The earth, which was meant to be a shared garden for all, was carved up, claimed, and fiercely defended. The beautiful tapestry of creation began to be torn apart by the very beings who were meant to be its caretakers. The distortion of the plan also manifested within the human heart. The story of the first children born outside the garden illustrates this new broken reality with painful clarity. Cain and Abel. Abel, a shepherd, maintained a heart of simple faith, offering the best of what he had back to God. Cain, a farmer, worked the soil, but his heart was filled with jealousy and resentment. He saw God's favor upon his brother not as something to aspire to, but as a personal insult. The innocence of the garden was truly gone, replaced by the complex and dangerous emotions of comparison and pride. When Cain's offering was not regarded as highly as Abel's, the darkness in his heart grew. God spoke to him, warned him, offered him a path back.
Why are you angry? If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it.
This was a moment of choice, a chance to overcome the growing shadow within him. God did not abandon him to his anger, but Cain refused to listen. He allowed his jealousy to consume him. he led his brother Abel out into a field and, in a fit of rage, he committed the first murder. This act was a terrible milestone in the story of humanity. It was the moment when the separation from God led directly to violence between people. The blood of a brother cried out from the very ground that was meant to sustain them. This tragic story became a powerful symbol for all human conflict to come. As generations passed, the darkness that began with Cain's choice spread across the earth. The human heart, left to its own devices, became increasingly corrupt. The world was filled with violence, greed, and a complete disregard for the Creator and for each other. The divine plan for a harmonious existence seemed to be utterly lost, buried under layers of human wickedness. God looked upon the world and saw that the beautiful creation had been marred. The thoughts and intentions of humanity were continuously evil. The pain of this corruption was immense, a deep sorrow for what had been lost. This led to a decision of immense gravity, to wash the world clean and begin again. It was a radical act, a cosmic reset button. But even in this moment of judgment, God's plan was not one of total destruction. It was an act of purification. God found one man, Noah, a single point of light in the overwhelming darkness. Through Noah and his family, a remnant of humanity and a pair of every living creature would be saved. A great flood was sent to cleanse the earth, a powerful symbol of the consequences of straying so far from the original path. When the waters finally receded, Noah and his family stepped out onto a fresh, clean world. It was a new beginning, a second chance for humanity. As Noah made an offering of thanks, God made a new promise, a covenant with all living creation. Never again would the world be destroyed by a flood. The sign of this everlasting promise was the rainbow, a beautiful arc of color set against the clouds. This was a profound message of hope, showing that even after the most terrible judgment, God's ultimate desire was not destruction, but relationship and redemption. The promise was there, hanging in the sky after the rain. Even as civilizations rose and fell, and as humanity continued to struggle in the shadows of its own making, the original plan was never completely forgotten. It echoed in the hearts of certain people, inspiring acts of goodness and compassion that shone like stars in a dark night. These were the whispers of light, moments when people chose love over fear and service over selfishness. Think of the story of Ruth, a woman from a foreign land, who showed unwavering loyalty and kindness to her mother-in-law Naomi. In a world of tribalism and suspicion, her simple act of love became a beacon of faithfulness. Consider the prophets, figures who spoke with daring courage against the injustices of their time. Isaiah, Jeremiah. They called out kings and commoners alike, reminding them of God's desire for justice and mercy. They spoke on behalf of the poor, the widowed, the orphaned, those forgotten and oppressed by societies consumed with power and wealth. These prophets were often rejected, mocked, persecuted for their words. Yet they continued to speak the truth. There are countless stories, both famous and unknown, of ordinary people performing extraordinary acts of kindness. The stranger who stops to help a traveler beaten and left for dead on the side of the road. The woman who shares her last bit of food with a hungry prophet. These acts may seem small in the grand sweep of history, but they are incredibly significant. They are moments when the divine blueprint for humanity breaks through the surface of a broken world. They are proof that the capacity for love, empathy, and self-sacrifice was never completely extinguished from the human heart. These whispers of light were not random occurrences. They were evidence that God was still at work in the world. Each act of kindness, each stand for justice was a small step towards restoring the original plan. It continued to flicker, waiting for the moment when it could once again burst into flame. Then, at a specific moment in history, the whisper of light became a living person. God's plan for restoration took its most direct and personal form. A man named Jesus was born. He was not a king in a palace or a general with an army. He was a humble carpenter. But his life and his teachings would become the clearest picture of God's original plan since the garden. He came not to condemn the world for its brokenness, but to show it a way back home. He was, as he said, the way, the truth, and the life, a living, breathing roadmap back to the heart of God. His message was revolutionary in its simplicity. He taught people to love God, love their neighbors, and to love themselves. He stripped away the complex rules and rituals that had been built up over centuries and focused on the condition of the human heart. He didn't just talk about love, he lived it. He spent his time with the outcasts of society, the poor, the sick, and the despised. He healed the blind, he fed the hungry, he offered forgiveness to those who were crushed by shame. His every action was a demonstration of the original plan in motion. He showed a world where every person has value. He was building a new kind of kingdom, not one of land and armies, but a kingdom that resides in the hearts of those who choose to follow his way of love. His life culminated in the ultimate act of self-sacrifice, willingly giving his own life. His death and subsequent resurrection were the ultimate statement of hope, declaring that not even death could defeat God's love. He had built a permanent bridge across the chasm, offering a clear invitation for every person to cross, to have their connection with God restored and to begin living according to the original beautiful plan once again.